Yes. Yes, we can start. Please go on. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Go on. And Yedikachi, you can go on.
Okay, so one of the reasons why we propose the meeting is to get us up to speed on how the entire system is structured,
Mm.
and then ask our questions if anyone has any issue or um, issues trying to set up the environment.
Mm.
So that's the reason why we came up with the proposal for a meeting.
All right. That's fair. So first thing I want to point out, click up. You have to note that you don't have all the permissions. So if you don't have full membership permission. So if you are looking for any particular thing you're struggling with, just ping any of us to request if it is a permission request. But the one thing that I have learned is that you should know when to ask questions, because sometimes what you are really struggling with is something that someone else has faced before and it can easily point you out. So as soon as you try a thing or two and it's not working, feel free to ask. Essentially, what is expected is for you to see this board. So I think I granted you permission to the dev team, and inside the dev team, you see the various lists. And the one that we're working with right now is the April 2025 list. So when you come to April 2025, I prefer the board layout. So you go to the board layout, you'd find these ones. These are usually the tags that has been assigned. I mean, that has been created, and some of them have been assigned to individuals. So you can always, I think there's a way to filter by assignee. Yeah. So if you choose assignee and let me choose any one of you. Okay, Milka is here. So I can see that there are two tags. There are two tags assigned to Milka. Okay, so yeah, there are two tags assigned to Milka, and that's all, right? If I wanted to see someone else, then I'll choose the other person, and that's how it works. You can decide not to use the assignees, and you see everything. Who is working on what and at what stage are they in? Okay. Is there anything that is bothering you with it so that I can jump straight to the
No, I think it's making more sense right now.
okay.
It's making
All right, yeah. So that's how it works. When you are given, you just look for the one that you've been assigned to. You click on it. Sometimes there are some more details on the tax, so you get to find it. There are some tax that also come with subtax. So you'd find the subtax under the main tax when you have picked it. I think there is this particular one, for instance, has about three different subtax. So you come here and you see three different subtax, but this has been assigned to a particular person. So you're not seeing anything there, meaning you've not been assigned a tax. But Onyedikachi, I think you were supposed to be working on something, if I remember correctly. What
yes.
what were you working on?
NIN updating a restriction
Okay.
for the format of national ID, not NIN, sorry, national
Okay.
ID.
So that used to be it was reported in as a bug. So you may have to pick it from the bug tracking. So there are two things that we are looking at the board. We have the April 2025, which is where we add the tax. Then if anybody used the bug reporting form to report a bug, it comes to bug tracking. So under backtracking as well, when you come here, you are able to see all the tags. I usually prefer to use the board view. So when I go to board view, oh, there's no, okay. Why are they all open like that? No, I don't want any grouping. Relax. Why is it? Let's see. Okay. Okay. So these are all tags. No, I think there's a simple board view. I'm looking for. Yes. So these are all the bugs that have been reported and where they stand right now. You can always look for things that have been assigned to individuals. So if I look at your tags, you've been assigned. Currently, it is at open. Open means this bag is still there, right? As soon as you pick the bag and you start working on it, you should move it to in progress. It is that easy. Drag and drop it. Welcome, Gideon. So sometimes when the bug has been reported and we are not sure, but you are attempting to understand it, we put it to triage. Triage is where we are trying to understand this bug, right? And I'm not too sure whether it is indeed a bug. Somebody has reported it, and we need to work on it. The Once you start working on it, you move it to in progress. If you need more information about it, maybe you're working on it, you need more information, you move it to need more information. Then you keep asking about it. So every time when we come here, was it has it been duplicated or did you just do something to it? Looks like it's been duplicated.
Yeah, I moved it from triad to so from progress to triad.
Okay. Anyway, so well, the various steps here, if you've done the work and it's in testing phase, then you move it to testing. If this bug cannot be reproduced when you triage it, you move it here. If you think it is not a bug, then you move it here. But finally, if you finish solving a problem, then you close it. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it
All
does.
right,
Thank you.
good. And when you do this, we receive notifications in Slack. So we are able to see what is going on. It's weird that the movement that I did didn't trigger any notification. Okay, no worries. But the same thing applies to when you are given a task. You should be able to move your boards. So let me see. Why is this testing here? Supposed to be. Anyway, let's say something that, let's say this. I'm planning it. I'll move it to planning. As soon as I begin working on it, I have to move this to in progress so that anytime your lead or whoever is your supervisor looks at the board, they should know at what point you are right now. From in progress, you go to PR made. That means that you've made a PR, so they should be able to go to click up and see it. And the recommendation that we have right now is when you make a PR, the title of your PR should have the tax ID in it. So this is a PR that Gideon made, and you see that we have the tax ID here. So if you look at, you click on any of the tax, let's say this one, you have an ID here that you can copy. That tax ID that you're given will be the preface to your PR. And the best thing that I recommend is the title of your PR should be something close to what the title of the tax is. And it shouldn't usually be this long. Cut this. Okay, it's even down here. Yeah. So you have the tax ID. Then you also have the the title of the tax for the PR, just as you see. You can give it any title for as long as it captures what you are doing, but the easiest way is to use this. Okay, now to the code base. Gideon, are you available to do the walkthrough, or do you want me to do it?
You can begin and I'll take over.
All right, sure. So someone from Panacea reported an issue, and it's the error they are having is unauthorized. So I'm just checking, and I'm realizing that the permissions that they have. Where is this thing? Yeah, the issue has to do with the permissions. So the person is a pharmacy technician, and I realize that the permissions that we give technicians, there is no create patient. So we need to update that. Even a medicine counter assistant has create patients. So as soon as possible, but I think this is not functional. There are a couple of other things here that are yet to be implemented. This as well. Um, yeah. Anyway, the first thing that I would recommend for you guys is now there are a lot of AI tools to assist you. Yesterday, when I saw that you had that complaint, I wanted to try to see if the AI could produce some form of a guide. I'm not very impressed with what it did, but hey, I didn't have time to even check it. So you want to understand the code base. Trust me, this is even not like the biggest code base that you'd ever work with. And of course, when we started, it wasn't this big, and it's getting complex by the day. A lot of things being added. We keep doing a lot of refactoring. In fact, Gideon has done a host of refactoring recently. That's why it's even better now. Because when we are building, as I keep saying, we work with speed. So sometimes we have to just focus on the working solution, and once it is working, then we can come back and look at how can we optimize it, right? So if you have a huge code base, and I can show you something uh, at my workplace, for instance, this is a very heavy code base. I have about this this directory alone has about three different servers in there, and a very complex product that we work on, right? And when you join in as an intern, you not necessarily get anyone to take you through the code base. Of course, you can ask questions, and if somebody is available, they can assist. But the first thing you really want to do is now you have some AI tools that can help you understand things. So you can let the AI snoop around and ask it questions for you to get a good understanding of it. The other thing is for you to also understand the framework that is being used. So, for instance, here in this code base, I'm not sure if you are aware right now, but there are two main servers that we have. So we have an Express.js set. Okay, let me say two main projects. Let me just say that we have the Express.js project and we have the Nest.js project. So I hope you all can see my screen, and maybe I should try and increase the font. Okay, not what I thought. Okay, so if you take a look at this particular directory that is called server, that is the Express.js server. So if any of you is familiar with Express.js, this is where you find it. And the start server.js is where we the server initialization file. That's what people usually call server.js or index.js. This is where you find it, right? That is probably not what your worry should be about right now, and that the code base in the server directory is in JavaScript, but the Next.js part is in TypeScript. And I hope by now you know the difference between JavaScript and TypeScript. Feel free to ask any questions that you have. When you come to the rest of the directory or the content here, the source directory contains most of the Next.js related code. So that is where you begin your journey from, the source directory, SRC directory. If you are tasked to do something that involves the server directory, you'll be told about it. Mostly we use the Express.js server directory to handle our automations. So you would find that we have a couple of automations that are running. That's a couple of cron jobs that are running. And most of that are being handled by the Express.js server. Initially, we're going to implement it with the Next.js server, but it involved a couple of hacks. And even with that, we still ran into issues. So it made sense to separate the automations from the Next.js application. So that is why we have it as such. Then we also have another back end here. So there's another product that we're working on called PepRS, and that isn't live yet, but the code base here is a back end for PepRS. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to worry much about it. If you are given a task in there, it will be pointed out for you. When you come to the source directory, and I want to believe now, Maker and Onyedikachi, at least for you have been exposed to Next.js at least. I think so far it was just the Richmond that I know wasn't exposed to Next.js, but the rest of you have been exposed somewhat. In Next.js, there is a concept known as actions, right? Actions allows you to interact with your server, with a server, or run code on a server without necessarily going through an API endpoint. So we have a couple of activities that we need to run on the server. So there are some functionalities that we need to run on the server. And because we want to be able to reuse them and not necessarily go through an API route, we create actions for them. So you see something like get row, and get row, as it seems, just simply means an action for getting the rows. So if you are working in the back end and you needed some data to check, let's say, the role of somebody, then it's likely to be in here, right? So those are the actions. The app directory, so in Next.js, from Next.js 13 and above, we have the page directory, which was the previous implementation of Next.js, and the app directory, which is the newest version. The app directory is what we are using. And essentially in Next.js, when you use the app directory, what it gives you is that inside the app directory, any other folder that you create that has a page.tss in it is a route. And these things, you should learn them when you start learning about Next.js. So if you don't know them, I think it's high time you go and take a quick crash course on Next.js, just so that you know some of these things. So the app directory is what we are using. The way we've categorized this, when you put a directory in the parentheses, when you put it in a parenthesis, that is route grouping. So we are grouping a certain routes that are related in terms of their functionality. And because we put it into the bracket, that word or the name of the directory does not form part of the route. If we don't put it in bracket, then the name will form part of the route. I hope it makes sense. If I go to RS Connect right now and say, let me use the staging, iris connect slash admin. Okay, no, let me say slash portal. This URL does not exist, even though I have portal here. The reason this does not exist is because we have it in parentheses. So it is considered as more of an invisible path that is not part of the actual path that we have created. But if I go in there, you see that admin here does not have the parentheses. So what it means is that the root of my app checks from here, and the first thing is admin. So I can actually have slash admin, but slash admin, the only time a route is detected as a route, a valid route, is if that directory that you're pointing to has a page.tsx in it. And now it feels like I'm doing a Next.js tutorial here. I do not want to do Next.js tutorial, so please, you may have to go and read some of these things. Okay, I'm just highlighting it for you to be aware. So the routing system, the app directory structure has a way that we route. I can't go to just slash admin because there's no page.css within that admin directory. Even though it is a valid route, there's no page.css. So it is not available. But if I open any of these tenants, there is a page.css in the tenant directory. That means that if I go to tenants, that will be a valid URL in Next.js. So that's how Next.js detects its path or the routes. Is that okay? And these are mostly the routes in the front end. When you go to the routes in the back end, you have to use the API route, which is not too different, but I'll show you that soon. So if you are given any tasks to look at something, let's say to work on the register. No, I was going to say something before I get here. This different grouping, the auth group, is what we use for the authentication. So if you go to the platform and you go to sign in, the sign in, this page is actually coming from the auth directory. Okay, so you'd see that we have login. Let me go find out. Okay, so it's called login here. So you see that we have auth and slash login. Okay, so this is where that is coming from, auth then slash login. So if you were tagged to work on this particular page and say, oh, look, open to this page, there is an issue. Gideon, has that issue been fixed? Okay, now this works, right? Okay, cool. Then there was something else to the password part. Okay, so assuming our start to work on this page, something is not working, I have to work on it. The way I know which directory to go to is pick from here, auth slash login. So I go into app directory and I look for, this is just a grouping, so it's not part, this auth part is not part. And now we come to another auth directory. Then this auth directory has the login directory. So the page.tss is what you are seeing over there. But when you check in here, there is an implementation, and all of these things over time will make sense to you. The reason why we have to now abstract this into its own separate component. So especially when you want to do the metadata for the purposes of SEO, all of these things are things that you get used to. So I don't expect you to just start today and you know everything. But what I expect you to do is to ask questions. So for instance, a question that will come into my mind is, why do we have to abstract this into a separate component? The content here couldn't we have put it in here, because this looked like a very simple file, and there is a reason to that. So if you find that reason, you've learned something. Okay. All right. That is for the auth pages, the reset password, the registration of clients, all of those things fall under the auth directory. Then when you pick the portal is after you've logged in, all these interfaces that you are seeing falls under the portal. Then we have finally public. Public is when you go to rsconnect.com, what you see. So these ones are the public pages. So for instance, if I go to contact, takes me to a contact page. So this page is actually coming from under public. We should have contact and page.tss. This one, that is where it is coming from. Okay, so anything that you don't need to be logged in to access, that is put under the public routes group. If you need to be logged in to access it, it's put under the portal. If it is part of the authentication flow, which is login, sign up, reset password, all of those things are under auth. Any questions? Okay. The next set of things that I would mention. Oh, clicking on. Inside the app directory, we also have an API directory. So the API directory is for the back-end implementation in Next.js. So in Next.js, all the back-end implementation that will be created as a route would have a directory within the API directory inside of the app directory. So when you're using the app directory, you put the API directory inside app directory. Then inside the API directory, you need to create that route that you want to go to. And each route is identified with a route.ts file. For the front end, I mentioned that each route is identified with a page.ts file. So if you took any of these and it has page.tsx file, then it means this is considered as a route. That means I could go to rsconnect/analytics. Sorry, when it loads, I'm logged in /analytics, then it should take me to this page. In the same way, if I want to access any backend, it has to be within the API route. Then the directory itself needs to have route.ts file in it. So let's open any of these. When you come to the admin, we have inside it, we have tenants, then routes.ts. It means that it is a tenant that is the route. So if I want to reach this, it will be /API/admin/tenants. That will be how I get to that endpoint. So you may have a task that involves you doing both a front end task and a back end task. The front end will usually be within these three directories, or maybe they are components and we have components here. If it is a shared component, so for those of you who have done some work in React before, you know about components. For all shared components, we create them in this component directory. So you can come here and reuse any of the ones that we have. And I have mentioned before that we use mostly shard CN UI component, unless if we don't have an existing one or it is more of a custom one that doesn't exist, then we create our own. Otherwise, you should feel free to use any of the components from here. The way to use this is if you are looking for badge, copy this and simply install it in your terminal. It will ask whether you want to override it if you already have an installation of that. So here, maybe I'm not even in the right direction. Why is it asking me to install? Wait, that's strange. Okay, you let me keep going. So you can easily install by just copying this and pasting it. If it already exists, it will ask you whether you want to override it or not. But if it already exists, you do not necessarily need to create it. Otherwise, any of the components, you can take your time and go through. If you are asked to do anything and you need any components, you can always find some here. All right. Then if it is front end and back end, the back end code is likely to be within the API directory. Okay. Any other important thing I need to mention? Constants. So depending on what you are working on, there are times that we need to define some specific constants that will be reused in the app depending on the functionality that you're having. So an example is with permissions. And the reason we like to use constants is because sometimes you have to reuse certain things in the application or different parts of the application, and just even changes in the spelling can affect the functionality. So in most of those instances, you want to use a constant such that it is coming from, like, we have a single source of truth when it comes to those ones. So this is an example of some of the constants that we have, and there are a couple of others that you can find here as well. The one thing that I will encourage is if you are asked to implement something, try your best to review what has already been implemented. Anything close to what you've been asked to do, then you can take inspiration from there and use that to implement yours. Okay. Um, so I don't even know if I should go over this, but some of these things may not necessarily apply to anything you're going to be doing right now. So not to bother much. The last thing that I will talk about is the repository and the services. When we started initially, the code base were just using the default Next.js implementation style, where all the backend implementation will be in the route files. So everything that you have to do with the backend will be in the route files. But at certain points in time, it becomes very challenging because you have a lot of functionalities, a lot of things happening inside just one file. Okay, so in order to introduce some form of abstraction and to help us to easily manage the code base, we introduce the service repository layer where, and trust me, we are still thinking through our processes and refining them. So recently we have even been rethinking it, but I'm just introducing you to it because it's in the code base and you'll get to understand how to use it. Maybe in the near future, we are going to change how we are using it. But the repository is more of where we have just the database interactions. So this is where we are using object-oriented programming. So prior to we starting to use the service repository layer, we were not using object-oriented programming. But as we are introducing this, we want to use object-oriented because it makes it easy for us to scale the solutions that we're building, making it easy to reuse the code. Like, if you know anything about object oriented programming, you know that something like inheritance can be very helpful, especially when we have methods that are similar in terms of their functionality. So the repository layer is just a layer that allows you to interact with the database. So if you create a new model in the database schema and you want all the methods that will be used to interact with the database, we capture that in the repository. So for instance, if I take the encounter repository, the encounter repository or encounter feature in itself is one of the complex features that we have in our application. So it's very scary. And it's even one of the reasons why we had to introduce this level of abstraction. If you take a look at some of the things that we have, and let me quickly pull some of them up. Yeah. So you see that we have a method for creating encounter. We have a method for updating encounter. All these are just direct interactions with the database. That is all. So essentially, when you come to the repository, anything that you do there just has to do with interaction with your database, or get it's either you are performing any of the CRUD operations. You are creating, you are reading, you are updating, you are deleting. That is what is happening here. If there is any form of business logic, you need to, maybe after you have gotten the data, you need to refine it, remove certain things. For instance, the patient data that you are sending to the front end, it is not good to send the password of the patient to the front end. So if you pull the data from the back end or from the database through the repository is the one that is interacting with the database and getting the data of the user. Now, at the service level, you can manage that. You can introduce some logic that will check if there is password in it, remove the password from the object that is being returned. Then you would be able to now return the object. So all those business logic, all those logical operations that you will do should happen in a service layer. So for every repository, we create a corresponding service layer. So if you come to encounter, we have the encounter service layer. Then you will see that here we do some bit of, you see here, there is some bit of logic. We are saying list of files that should be ignored in the update. So unlike in the repository where we just went straight into the database to update the file, in the service layer, we are actually doing some cleanup to make sure that before we hit the database, which will be done by the repository, everything is in the format that is expected. So that is how you structure this if you are using that approach. It is highly recommended, but as I said, we are still rethinking it. We've seen that there are a lot of redundancies in the code base, and for that reason, we may end up using a different approach or simplifying this entire approach that we have. But if you happen to do anything relation to what we have done, then this is what you need to know. There are a couple of other services that we have here, and these are more of third-party services. So for instance, we have the AI services. This in particular is Gemini, where the implementation for the various AI stuff that we have, we're using Gemini right now. And as at yesterday, we created an OpenAI account. So very soon, we should have an OpenAI service that we are going to use. Maybe not to call it OpenAI, depending on what we want. So maybe GPT layer, GPT service, or depending on the API that we want to use from OpenAI, we can have a specific service that talks to the OpenAI API or connect to the API. So all the third-party services can also be put here. So here, for instance, we have implementation of file handling. That is, if we need to upload things to a cloud source, for instance, here, implementation for S3, then we can leverage this service. and login, notification, PDF generation. So all of these are the services, third-party services that we utilize in the application, as well as the services that are corresponding to the repositories that we have, which are in this directory. Types. I believe you all know types by now because you know TypeScript. So this is where you will define all the types for the code that you're writing, any of the TypeScript related code. So anytime you have to centralize a type, and we highly recommend it, especially if you're going to reuse a type in more than one file. If you're going to reuse a type in more than one file, then you need to create a separate type file for it. Or depending on which functionality it is. So for instance, you look at what we have diagnostic test types, we have encounter types, follow-up types. So if you are you happen to be working around any of these, then you can use the files that are here already. Otherwise, you are also allowed to create your new file for it. Styles. I don't think we are going to give you a task where you'd have to necessarily come and update the global styles. If anything happens as such, you may have to prompt us because they have already been implemented. You just need to understand it and utilize it. In terms of brand, the company's color scheme has already been utilized in there. So it's pretty easy for you to work around it. You may have to go through it to understand a few of the values that are available and what you have access to and what you don't have access to. Okay. Any questions? Yes. Questions?
I don't have any questions for today.
Okay. So I guess that's more like the overview that you guys wanted. Or is there something more that you wanted? We could talk about it. Okay. So I
Yes,
didn't. All right. Let me just highlight this, then I go on. Oh,
okay.
why is this? Where is the hooks? Uh, okay. So in the front end, one of the processes that you need to be aware of, or approaches that you need to be aware of, how we handle data fetching in the front end. So most tutorials that you watch maybe are old tutorials, and most of them use use effects hook. So there's a concept known as hooks in React, and hooks will usually, these are more like reusable functions that you create. You know that these are functions that you would need to reuse at certain points in time, and you create them to make them reusable, and they are very, very helpful. They start with the word use when it comes to naming the functions themselves. So use effect in itself is one of the hooks, but you are allowed to create custom hooks for yourself. So use effect is one of them that was primarily used to pull or fetch data. How it works is that when the app has loaded, use effect to be triggered automatically, then it will change based on the dependencies that you give it. So whenever you create a hook, you can give the hook a dependency, or especially for use effect, it has dependencies. You can assign it dependencies. If you don't assign it any dependency, what it means is that it will run only once. But if you assign it a dependency, anytime that dependency changes, it will also automatically rerun itself. The challenge that we have with use effect is it doesn't handle caching and revalidation of the data. So now we are reframing from using use effect for fetching data. And that is something that is very important for you to know. So we are using what we call SWR. So it's a concept that you need to probably go and read about. SWR. So in using SWR, you would realize if you check the code base, you'd realize that most of the places where we handle fetching of data, especially when you want to display the data and the data can change, you want to be able to quickly revalidate the data and update it as soon as it changes. So to make sure that the app is that responsive, that's why we are using that. And we use that in conjunction with the various hooks that we've created. So these are, like, for instance, if I say use countries, this is more of a function that we have created such that in the front end, you can easily reuse this if you need the countries. So the explanation here tells you what it does. Retrieves a list of countries and provides a helper function country to find and return the label of specific country based on its value. So that is how the hooks work. They allow us to reuse this. So if you are creating any sort of functionality where it's going to be reused in multiple places in the front end, then we recommend that you make a hook out of it. But before you do that, make sure that you have checked what exists and what doesn't exist to ensure that we don't already have it and you are just making a duplicate of it. So that is the hooks part for you. Yes. When you look at you are going to ask a question.
Okay, my question was concerning the database structure. We just did two explanation on the tables we have. We have a user table, a
Okay.
tenant table, and a patient table. And maybe
Okay.
you can maybe go into them a bit and explain what each one represents.
All right. Great. Thanks for pointing that out. So with the databases, we have two databases as you see. One is for the PEP RS. So the schema.pep.prisma is for PEP RS. And you don't need to worry about it now. The schema.prisma is the one for RS Connect. And our database is getting busier and busier by the day. One of these days, we may also do some cleaning up of the database, but we are building and going, and as we build, we clean up. Okay. So the first thing you need to know is what Prisma is and how it works. That's the first thing you need to know when it comes to the database. These are required by Prisma. So nothing much to say about it. They are required. The models that we have, and maybe we need a documentation to explain all of these things. I never thought about it, but okay. So the models that we have, and in the database, or when we started, we used to call patients, people who walk into the pharmacy to buy stuff or to seek care in the pharmacy. We call them patients. But from our interactions with people during our stakeholder engagement, we realize that patient is not the right terminology because not everybody who walks into the community pharmacy is sick. Patient refers to somebody who is sick. So we decided to change it to clients. So you see that on the front end, we don't have anything like patients. It's all clients. And in most part of the code base is clients. But because we already have a database table existing and there is data in it, and we do not want to lose that data, we still kept the name patients for the database part. So that's one of the things you should note. So the patient represents the entity that we call client, someone who is going into the community pharmacy to seek care. That is the patient. How we thought about this is the application in itself is a multi-tenant application. What this means is that we have multiple users, in this case, multiple organizations or pharmacies using it. And each pharmacy can have a branch. So in the code base, when you see a tenant refers to a pharmacy. Then each pharmacy can have a branch. So we have branches. Then we have patients, but we have made a patient model independent of tenants. So the patient model stands on its own. Then we find a way to associate the patient with a tenant. So it's just the patient ID that we'll put inside the tenant to show that this patient belongs to this tenant. And the one way that you can do this, how many of you have PG admin installed? Does any of you have PG admin? Yes, yes. None of you. Did you all use NeonDB for your database setup? Or how are
Uh,
you accessing the database? Yeah.
I'm connecting to the database through the command line. So I actually tried installing pgadmin, but I ran into some issues. So
Okay.
I just
Do you use is it a MacBook, a Windows machine? What operating system are you using?
um I'm working on Linux, Arch Linux.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So if you look at the main server for hosting, like our production server is an Ubuntu server. So in that place, we don't have any UI. But yeah, I want to show you something. I hope I can find it. Okay. So if you have PG admin, one of the things that you can do is to come here and say ERD for database, and it will draw the entity relation diagram for you. So you get to see the relationship between all the various entities. So yeah, pretty nice, but complex. That's why I've not been able to export this. So this is what we've been doing. Sometimes when I look at it, it's scary. This is what we've been doing. Uh, but let's try and zoom in, and I'll try and explain them one after the other. Which one is this? Why doesn't it give it the name? Oh, strange. Oh, this is the name of the table. Okay. Okay, okay, okay. That's the name of the table. All right. So this is medication instruction. Medication instruction. These particular ones, don't worry about them right now. Still work in progress. The medication search functionality is still work in progress. So let me find ones that are more important. Oh my goodness. Need to find a way to arrange these things well. Thought it was PDF download. Okay. So you're seeing the user. The user is connected to almost everything. The user in this case is the staff that works for the tenants. That's the user. So let me explain them like that. User is a staff that works for a tenant. A patient is someone who goes to the pharmacy to seek care in a pharmacy, right? So maybe I should just go back to this and I'll try and explain them one after the other. When you take the patients, go to this. If you take any patient at all and you go to their profile, take a patient, registered patient, go to their profile. You see that we have these information, their personal information, their medical information, contact, emergency contact, insurance. These are the places where they are coming from. So the models here are all related to the patient's model, and how the relationship is established is through the patient ID. So each patient has a language model connected to it. We have chronic condition as well, which is coming from here. And this is the relationship. We have the address field. So if you come here and you're taking the address of the person, which is here, go to edit. The address data that you're collecting from here is actually being put from this model. The next one, allergies. So the same way, if you go, I think under medical, you find allergies. This here, you have the allergen and the reaction, which is also coming from here. Okay, emergency contact. So also part of that. Insurance plans, also part of the patient's model. Social determinants, also part. Lifestyle is also part. So all the first set of models that you see are related to the patient and their profile. And this is not specific to any tenant. What it means is that, and we haven't implemented that feature, but what it means is that if a patient is registered on RS Connect and they go to another pharmacy, maybe they came to pharmacy A to register and they've been using pharmacy A all this while. If they go to pharmacy B and pharmacy B is using RS Connect, they should have, pharmacy B should have access to all this information about the patient. So we are not locking that information under any particular tenant. That data does not belong to the pharmacy, it belongs to the patient. So the patient should be able to carry their data anywhere they want to go. That's why it's at the top and has no blocker, or is not embedded inside the tenant. So to be able to link the patient with the tenant, that's why we have the tenant patient model. So this is where the connection between the tenant and patient is happening. And Gideon, once you're on the call, let me highlight that. So we need to check this. I think for now, it's only one-to-one connection between the patient and the tenant. But we need patient to be able to belong to multiple tenants. So we may have to update this. Okay, but the rest of you, what you need to note is that this tenant patient is the connection between our patient model and our tenant model. Because as I said, we implemented them separately, they are on their own. So the only way they come together is through this joint table tenant patient. Okay, reminders. Reminders are more of, I think, if I remember correctly, uh, Okay. So when you come here under schedulers, we have schedule SMS reminder. So this is where the reminders are. The message that you send. Let me try and add some documentation. I may even forget. Don't worry. Later, I would work on them. But the reminder is coming from this. We used to call it reminders. Now we've made it a scheduled SMS reminder, and you get to see a list of all those that have been scheduled in the past. So that is where these reminders are coming from. The next one, reminder log. So we used to also show the log of reminders, but now we've removed it. So the log is coming from here. It shows the reminders that has been sent out and their status and stuff like that. Then message is coming from, for now it's SMS. The goal is that in some updated way would use not just SMS, but we'll have WhatsApp, we'll have okay, email. People have frowned against email for now. So at least we may introduce a new field called message type, so that if it is WhatsApp, we know that it's WhatsApp. But for now, it's all SMS. So the message part is for the SMS implementation that you can find here, sending SMS and SMS retriever. You find that in this model. Message template. So to make sending of messages easier, we allow for people to create templates. So when you click this, you see that here you can view templates that have been created, and you can also create your own template. And this is happening in this model. So this is the model that manages the message template. Then this message template that we have created is scoped to the tenant. So you can see that there has to be a tenant, and there's also an optional branch assignment, so that each branch can have their own message template if they want, or they can all use the same message template. But we also realize that people start using the platform and they don't have any sort of templates to use, and they don't even know how to create templates. So we introduced the global message template, where we on our team will add this message templates for them. So they are able to reuse these message templates anytime they want. All they have to do is to import the message template, and it becomes part of theirs, and they can edit it as and when they want. So that is a global message template. The medical record is one that we have deprecated now, I believe. Yes, we've deprecated it. So it used to be, when we started off, it used to be the one for the test results that we're capturing, but we duplicated it in favor of a new implementation, which I'll show you later.
Are there records of that in the database though?
You did what? Sorry.
I'm saying, are there like records of that in the database so I can just remove it?
I think yes. I think there is. Let's not remove it. So
Hmm.
the first pharmacy that was on it, they have data in there. In
Oh,
fact, we are not displaying it to them. And the guy mentioned to me that there is this particular patient of his that he captured their data, and that patient is very particular about their data. So whatever we do, we shouldn't lose that data. The one thing that we can do, he's the person who was trying to do the backdating, and I think it was for that same patient. So the one thing we can do is, maybe I would open it and see if there is a possibility of copying the content. But there is a lot. I think I've done it before. There's a lot. So for now, let's not worry. Let it just be there. Okay, so guys, all you need to know is that we've duplicated this, so no need to sweat it. Medication is the medication that is given to patients. So that's where you find this. So if you happen to do anything in, you come here to medications, add medications. choose someone. So this data that you have, all of this name, strength, quantity, this is where it is coming from. And you'll find that there are some fields like this that we are no longer using, but we've left in there for backward compatibility because that was the original one that we called it. Now we stretch it into strength instead of saying dosage, and we've broken down the rest. So we are keeping it in there just because we have a client that used to use it. Okay, so if you see any of such things that is saying old field for backward compatibility, it means that currently we don't use it. When you are doing a new implementation, don't be calling that value. Okay. The next thing, medication instruction. So this is just a set of instructions. I don't even think we are using. Oh, okay. I think we are only using it for the medication search part, but essentially it is supposed to be this field where we are able to add. I think one of the things that we intend to do is to make some of these fields very customizable, such that each tenant can have their own values that they want. So that's where the medication instruction is coming from. And I think we use it in the medication search functionality too. User, as I've already mentioned, is the person who has access to log into this platform. So now I'm logged in with my own account and I'm a user. So all of that will be associated with the user model. You have the email, password, name, and I think now some updates have been made, and Gideon has done some amazing work recently with improving the security where we've introduced MFA and MFA using authenticator app and using OTP as well. Gideon, did we have an option to send via email apart from the
Yeah,
SMS and okay.
SMS, email, and authenticator.
All right, great. Yeah, well done on that. So this is where you find that, and you realize that the user has relationship with almost all the rest of the entities. All the entities that are bound to a tenant or the branch of a tenant are connected to the user. The reason this is important is because we need to be able to follow up on who did what. So audit login, for the sake of audit login. And this is a health application collecting health data. So it's very important for us to follow up on who is doing what so that if there is any problem, you should be able to track who did what. But also in the future, we should be able to give this analytics or statistics to the managers so that they know which of the staff is performing well in terms of appraiser they want to appraise, or they want to celebrate staff that are doing very well, or maybe for performance review we can do that. So that's why we have all these relationship with the various models that are scoped to the tenant level. So if you are creating any model, mostly you will not be assigned a task where you have to do a database operation. But if you have to, it's something that you would will be communicated with you. So anytime you are given a task and you do your research and it involves changing something in a database, please talk to us. So either you reach out to via the group or reach out to Gideon or myself before you make any changes to the database. Okay, there's one thing I was going to mention. Yeah, for the roles, we have the global role and we set super admin roles. So for now, super admin roles are only assigned to our team, which means that we have access to every functionality on the platform, but we have permissions that we use to scope what people have access to. So the permissions will be grouped into roles, and roles will be assigned to a user. That's what you see here. Okay. Now, finally, we get to the tenant. The tenant is like the pharmacy or organization that owns the pharmacy, right? And these are the details of the tenant. When we started off, we were doing purely Stripe. Did I say Stripe? Stripe subscriptions. So we implemented it such that anybody who wanted to use the platform would just go to our platform and sign up, pay their fee, and start using it on a monthly basis. They'll renew their subscription. But over time, we've learned that this doesn't really work in healthcare. So we are using a totally different approach right now. However, in the next couple of weeks to months, we are likely to revisit the topic of subscription billing. So yeah, these are all important for that sake, for us to be able to track people, the payment they have made, and all of that. Okay, so you see that the tenant tool has a lot of relationship. So any other model that is scoped to the tenant needs to have a relationship with the tenant, like what you can see a medication message template, all of these. Branch. So a tenant can have multiple branches or a single branch. The tenant is more of the pharmacy or organization that owns the pharmacy, and some pharmacies have a lot of branches. So we have to consider that. So that is what a branch is for. Patients group. When you check the UI, there is this clients groups where it allows you to put patients into specific groups. In this case, like diabetics group, and you can easily add or remove people from the group. So that is what we have for patients group. Patients group member. So just as you saw, these are the group members. So this model is what is holding that data. User branch. We've talked about users already, but what is happening here is which branch does this user belong to? And one thing that we did is to make the users to make it many to, let's say, many to one relationship. So many users or a user can belong to, okay, so it's one to many. A user can belong to many branches. So it is not just a single branch. A user can belong to multiple branches. That is why we have this. Okay. Then row. Yeah. So I spoke about row earlier, where a collection of the various permissions will come together to form row. So if I go to say admin tenant and pick any of these. So if you check the rows, like this is pharmacy admin, and these are the permissions. So we've put them all together, and that will form the row. But the row can be scoped to the branch level or the tenant level, which means that this row is, if I give you the row and it's scoped to the branch, it means you can only perform actions in that specific branch only. We can also have multi branches. So you can have a row that span multi branches, and we can have a row at the tenant level, and we can have a global row. A global row means that it is not scoped to just the tenant, right? So, yep, that is what you see. Permissions, I've spoken about them. These are handled in the code itself where we are checking if the user has various permissions, but we have the records in the database as well. And this model handles that. Contact request. So this is coming from the front end where if somebody came to isconnect.com and used the contact us form, that is where it comes to. It goes through this into our database. These are just enums that we use, I think, for the permissions. Yeah, for the permissions. So you don't really need to bother about it. Subscription, plan, all of those has to do with a subscription payment. Tenant usage is where we are tracking the use of various things like how many SMS you've sent and how many patients you've created. We're also going to add the AI token consumed and the various things that we are going to be tracking per tenant usage. Patient identification. So, Onyedikachi, I think you happen to be working on something that has to do with the ID. In the database is just expecting a string. So it's not an enum, so you don't have to worry about the database. But the Zod, I think is the Zod schema that is restricting what it needs to look for. So currently it's looking for just the Ghanaian IDs. But since we want to scale to Nigeria, we have to find a way to also check if it is a Nigerian ID. I think that's what your tax is about. But a way to identify the patient. So we use membership ID, their national ID, their phone number, and email should have been part, but I think we have email under the patient's model itself. So that is not a problem. Temporary subscription, yeah. So this was a trick that was very helpful when somebody was subscribing. So in the process of subscribing, Gideon implemented this as an intermediary to help the process and was very useful. Export. If somebody exported data from the application, we want to be able to track it because this is patient data. So if somebody logged in and exported data, we should be aware that this person has exported data. That's where it's being tracked. Um, membership ID. I think we are not using this. You know, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we are not using this model. Push
Yes, the
subscription.
membership. Yeah.
Okay. Push subscription. If you go to the settings, there is no. Where will I find it? Account. And on that note, let me announce every one of you, you are required to turn on two-factor authentication on your account. Do that as soon as you can so that nobody gets to hack you and we be in trouble. Okay, so this is the notification that you can subscribe to so that you get notified on your. This thing will say something went wrong, but then it will be subscribed. You need to check that. Okay, so that's where the push notification is coming from. Push subscription that you see. This is the model that manages that. Encounter, as I said, is one of the complex things that we have in this application. And that is coming from here, where you see as encounter. It's a very complex thing with relationship with so many other models that you'll be encountering. If you are given a tax on it, please be very careful. So encounter test is the diagnostic test part. Encounter log is more of the traces that gets to know, like we just use it to track the encounters that are created. Medication reminder. So this, we initially when we started was functional in there, but now not quite. The goal is to use it in the mobile app. So we're going to have a mobile app facing the patient facing mobile app. And this is what will tell the patient, hey, it's time for you to take your medications. So this is where that data will be tracked. Follow-up reminder. So in encounters, we have follow-ups. And when you set up the follow-up details, you set up when the patient should be reminded. So the reminder schedule, these things are managed by the follow-up reminder. Then we have follow-up feedback. So there is an implementation that we're working on where patients, if they miss their follow-up, would get the opportunity to respond to why they missed it. So they will provide feedback, and the feedback will be captured in this model. Then encounter medication. The medication, this is more of the joint table that connects the encounter table to the medication table. Notification. Um, remind me. This is the
Yeah, that's for the WebSockets.
in-app. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So in-app notification service. I think we are not using it that much, right? We had some challenges with real-time notification. All right. Yeah, so notification types, that is fine. The medication search related models. This is more of a new functionality. When you come to the treatment plan, here you could search for, right now we don't have any data in there, still work in progress. Very complex stuff, but I understand the complexity because it's one of the big problems even in the healthcare industry itself. So I fully understand. What we have implemented so far kind of solves for all possible use cases that we have thought about. So it's just a matter of getting the data and populating the database. And it has a lot of associated models as well. So that is where all these are coming from. Ooh. Diagnostic text results. So I mentioned earlier that we had to change the medic medical record. So we changed it to encounter test, and the encounter test is more of the connection table or junction table between encounter and the diagnostic test. So the diagnostic test too has been broken down into different types. This is where the result is captured. And we have the ones for vital signs are captured here. We have the numeric test type are also captured here. Then we have some that are category, those that we say positive, negative, inconclusive, like malaria test. Those ones are captured here. Patient medication source, so because now we are, when the patients have their app, they are going to be able to add medication by themselves from their app. We added this so that if it is added by a patient, we'll track it from here. If it is from an encounter, it will be put here. And maybe if it is coming from an external system, we'll capture it here. These are enums. I hope you know what enums are. If you don't know, that's your assignment. Please go and find out. I think most of the rest are just enums. Tenant settings. So this is also one of the things that we introduced where it allows us to easily manage the tenants related things. So For example, SMS settings, we can turn it off for any tenant at any time. Cost per SMS, currency, country shortcode, all of these fall under tenant settings. Medication refill schedule. This was also some tricky one. Was it this one or not? No. So with a medication refill schedule, we have, let's come here. Let me try. Medication refill. So if you enter a medication and you set the duration, you would have this refill chosen, right? Then we have a cron job that is running and checking that to know whether to send refills or not. So here you would see the refill reminder days. So this is where we determine in this particular account, this pharmacy uses 3 days and 1 day before. So our automation will check when the date of refill is and generate a schedule for that refill. So if they are certain it's say 3 days, and we can add more to this. So if I say day 7, so what our reminder will do now is that it will check if it checks and sees that in the next 7 days there's going to be refill for this patient. It will generate that refill schedule and set the date. So this date, a reminder should go out for this patient. This date, a reminder should go out for this patient. And this date, a reminder should go out. And that schedule is what is managed by this. Medication refill reminder. So this is actually the reminder itself that you created in here. So it calculates that reminder from the duration. If you say the start date is this and the person should take 5 days, then it would estimate the reminder date and store it. The cron job will now determine based on that to set the refill schedule. Invite is how we built this is for adding new users, you have to do it via invite. So the admin, the tenant, or someone with that level of permission or role should be able to invite new people. So this allows us to track who has been invited and whether it is still valid. I think that's what was done to you guys as well. You were sent invites to join. Patient request. So if you come here, we have client request functionality where we track things that clients want. So if a client came in and they needed a product, we could add it as a request here. Oh my goodness. Forgotten that I am on a production site. And there's no way to delete. Please note this thing down. Somebody should work on it. There's no way to delete this thing. How? Oh no. Remind me not to do any other thing. I'm on a live site. Okay. So that's for the patient request. Then patient request notification log. So as soon as you do that, see the problem is that it's possible that this person receives a message. That's a big problem. This person receives a message that says that this product that you requested from this pharmacy. Can you imagine? Okay. So that's where we log the notifications that are going out. We have another enum here. Recent patient search. So this is a functionality that Gideon implemented to sort of cache the searches that you have done. So if I come here, these are the recent searches. So that is coming from this model. Okay. Finally, we've gone through every model. Any questions? Yes, yes. Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. So just as I said, most of the tasks that you'll be assigned to, at least for now, will may not necessarily have anything to do with a database. But yes, it makes sense that you understand what each of these things is for, and hopefully this is helpful. There is also a documentation site. Oh, okay. But that documentation is the user facing documentation. But wait, do you guys read the README in the application, or is it not comprehensive? What does the README contain? Otherwise, your one of your first set of tasks would be go and update the README. In here as well, if you find here docs, like I try to explain some of the things here. So you can always come in here to read some of the things that we've written about. Oh no, you know, okay. Yeah. So I try to explain some of them. Maybe we need a lot more. The thing is that the project keeps growing. We keep making updates every now and then. So, and developers, we like coding, but when it comes to writing documentation, only God knows. So maybe the one thing that I recommended at my workplace was if they do video documentation. So maybe we'll do that where a human being sits to explain that. I think that is easier. Okay, Gideon, do you have anything to add, or Kennedy as well?
Also, from my side, nothing better to add, just to thank you
All
for
right,
taking us through the session. Yeah, I hope everyone now understands the code base.
cool.
Yeah, and then about the code base, you see, it's a little bit large. It's very big, and it looks scary for now, but then it's not that scary. You just take it bit by bit. You can understand whatever you're doing.
Yeah. The one thing that you should focus on is the tasks that you've been given. So, for instance, now if you Milka, the task you've been given is on. Let me leave this production side before I make another mistake. The task you've been given is on conditions, right? Chronic conditions. So when you go to the patient's profile, that's where you find the condition medical. You find it here, right? Edit profile. This is it for you to add, right? This is where it is, but here it is pre-test. So the goal is that if I'm searching for a condition, we should be hitting the, just as you were suggesting, the WHO API and searching for the condition that matches for me to select instead of typing pre-test. So how do I know where this is? The first place, you are looking at this slash client slash ID. The number 36 here is representing ID slash profile. Then inside that, they are looking for maybe something to do with these things. So the first thing you want to do is to go into the code base and look for the slash client slash ID. Slash client slash ID. So you can src the app directory. Then I told you these three route groups. The portal is when you are logged in, so it's likely to be in portal. Then clients over here, then ID. So now I'm getting close. After the ID, what's next? Profile. So I look for profile. Then this is the page.tss. So it means that everything that you are seeing here is actually coming from here. This looks like a very small page, so maybe something more to it. But you realize when you come here, there is another component that is being used here. Okay, it's imported from this side. Components, patient, profile. The easiest and fastest way to get there is to hold on your control key and click on it, and it will open that for you. Now I'm seeing all of these file, whatever. Let's go to the UI part. Okay, so header session, client profile. Let's come here. Header session, client profile. So I know I'm on the right page. How do I find this medical part so that I find the chronic conditions? So client profile is editing or not. Okay. User avatar, single image. So you keep going through until you find what you're looking for. Here we have edit client and we have view client. And you realize that the tab is medical, but the mode is edit. So it's likely to be within this edit client. So I hold on the control, click this. This is how you navigate the page. Then I can see that, okay, there is some tabs, personal, medical. I'm looking for something with medical. So let's keep going. This is where medical is. This is, okay, the tab trigger. Now, where is the content of it? The content. So the tab's content, this is for personal, this is for medical. So it means that it is in this component. So I keep going. That is how you navigate this thing. I'm looking for condition. Where do I find the condition? Focus on the UI because that's where I'm looking for. This is weight. So let's see. Is there weight here? There's weight here. It means I'm close. I'll probably find conditions soon. Cycling status, chronic conditions. So this is where we have the chronic conditions. Okay. And the add condition button here. And this is a form, right? So it means that the updates that I'm going to make is likely to be somewhere around here. But because I have to make an API call, it depends. If there is a need for an API key, then you want to route that through an API endpoint. We never want to call a private API key in the front end. So what that means is that if the WHO API requires that we have an API key, what it means is that you would go and create an API endpoint in the API that corresponds to this file. Okay, so mostly it's similar implementation. We have clients and ID. So if you look for the API directory, you are likely to find clients. You don't have clients here. That's interesting. Okay, we call it patients. So note that patients and clients are the same thing. On the front end, we changed everything to client, then ID and profile, right? And medical. So this is the current route where this is happening. You can choose to create a new route. Okay, you can choose to create a new route in here and say, and this is just for testing, and say ICD, ICD, or something like that, right? And inside this, you can have routes.ts. Then you implement the route to get ICD code. No, ICD. So they have to get a list of ICD conditions from WHO API. Okay, so something like this. You see, I'm using Kesa. So Kesa is giving suggestions on how this can be handled, and it could be true, it could not be true. It's possible that it's not true. I don't know, but you test it. So what this means is that if I made a call to this API is actually going to return to me the response from this endpoint. So I may have to test it to know that if that's exactly what I want. Then based on the structure of that data inside this place, I can make a call. And remember, we mentioned that for fetching, we are using the SWR. So if you don't know how to use it, you can look into the existing implementation where data is fetched, especially those that are fetched into a tabular form, and see how that is done so that you implement a similar thing using SWR. And yeah, that's how we approach it. If you are having any challenges, you reach out and we are happy to help. Okay. Are we excited or more confused? What is it like? Oh, we are left it. Only Milka. Onyedika Chitu has dropped off. Milka, how are you feeling about the internship so far?
Yeah, it's going on well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you see when we say go and do the work, just give it your best. Reach out when you have any questions. And I like to iterate the fact that tasks that are given to you are not given to you because Siri, who called you? Oh my goodness. These things are now becoming scary by the day. Ah, you're not telling me you can use ChatGPT to answer it. Anyway, yeah, so I keep saying that the tax that you've been given is not because we cannot do it, that's why you've been given a tax. And I want every team member to understand that like we all contribute our quota to the team and we gain experience from doing it. So almost everything that you are doing, someone else could have done it. But sometimes someone else has not tried it before. So it gives you that unique experience and exposure. So own what you do and do your best about it. I'm pretty sure the first thing that you do, especially if you are using an external API, like what you are about to use, the first thing you should do, if I was doing it, the first thing I'll do, I'll go to the WHO site, create an account if it requires creating an account, as you mentioned, generate my own API key and use it for testing purposes. Once I figured out how all of these things work, then you can ask the organization to now create the organization's API account or get the API key for you. Okay. So use tomorrow and the day after to try and implement something. And I think the best way you can do it is try hitting that endpoint with probably Postman or Tender Client or the new one that I started using. What is it called? Something API or Kel. Any of those things that you can use to hit an API endpoint to test to see what kind of data is coming back, and now how do I get the kind of data that I want in a way such that it is used as a drop down in the chronic condition field. Okay, I wish you the very best and please feel free to reach out if you have any concerns. And yep, we'll connect
Yeah,
some other time.
I have another question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, for example, I'm given a task to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the procedure? How do I push it to GitHub? Do I create a separate branch? How do I do it?
Okay. So sorry that we didn't mention that I guess we just expected everyone to know. But that's a good question. Thanks for asking that. So you create a branch that you work on from the main, like just create a branch from the main, then work on your branch. As soon as you are done, if you are not done, you can always make a PR, but as soon as you're done, you make a PR for it and assign a reviewer. There are some checks when you make a PR, those checks will run to tell you whether they have passed or failed. There is a particular one that we are particular about. The PR validation needs to pass. If it's not passing, you have to alert us. We will not merge any code where the PR validation is not passing. So that is very important. The rest, sometimes it passes, sometimes it fails, and we are okay with that. But for PR validation, when you make, maybe I should just show you my screen. Uh, so if let me show you the various PRs that have been made. So your tax has a tax ID. You pick that tax ID, then you pick the title of the tax that you're working on, make a PR on it. Then for each PR, you can assign somebody to review. So you either assign Gideon or myself, or you can also assign Lawrence. So any of us can review your PR. Gideon, myself, or Lawrence. Any of us can review your PR. So let's say, for instance, Lawrence made a PR, and this is where you add the reviewers. So you can see he has added, this is Gideon's account. So he has added Gideon as the reviewer. For me, when I come here, what I'm interested in is PR validation. If this is failing, there's no way we are merging the code, right? But for this particular case, I've gone through it. I understand why. And there's a fix that is on the way. So hopefully that clears this up and it shouldn't fail again. So that's how you go about it. Create your branch. When you are done, make a PR and ensure that the validation has passed, the PR validation has passed, then add a reviewer. If the PR validation is failing, you have to click into it just as I did to go and see why. If you click into it, you usually find where it failed. So here it failed during the build, and the error is given is invalid environment variables. And as I said, I understand why this is happening, and we are at the verge of solving it. Does that answer your question? All right.
Yes.
Any other question?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So I'm looking forward to seeing your first PR soon. I wish you the very best. Don't hesitate to reach out. Don't wait until it's too late before you reach out. If you have any questions or challenges, please ask as soon as you can. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Thank you all for joining. And bye bye for now. Or if there is any other thing